Well, dear friends, good morning. My name is Haldis Holst. I'm a Deputy General Secretary of Education International. That video you just saw was just a couple of weeks ago from the UNCSW in New York, when we were working on women's rights and the post-2015 development goals. Now we're in Dublin. Now we're EI. Now we're going to talk about women and leadership in trade unions. You've already heard some fantastic women as leaders in trade unions, and you've heard some very supportive men. Before I became Deputy General Secretary of Education International, I'd been a trade union activist since I started my teaching career in 1983. As a school rep, at the school level, in the local, in the municipality, at regional level, at national level, at international level. I could have never done that on my own. I could have never done that without the support of other women and of other men. And I believe the same goes for all of you, 300 plus activists in the room. You could have never done what you've done all on your own. We need to stand together. I can remember my first headmaster, a man, but a great supporter of saying, if you want to do union work, I'll support you. So did my next headmaster, who was a woman. She was just as supportive. My regional leader, who saw me at a seminar and said, I want to support you. He was a man. Great supportive, but also so many people, a lot of them in this room, that have meant so much to me, and I wouldn't have been in the position I am without them. I even want to recognize some of them. You have the President of the Union of Education Norway, Ragnhild, sitting down in the room there. She has been so close to me and supportive. You have Eva-Liss Sirén as the president of Lärarförbundet in Sweden, who has a neighboring union we support across borders. Thank you, Eva-Liss. And you have the two leaders of Education International you've already seen, Susan Hopgood and Fred van Leuven. I wouldn't have taken on international work if it hadn't been for the support of people like you. And last but not least, a speaker you will listen to tomorrow, Mary Fertrell, who said to me once, "Go, girl, go." And you know, I was so starstruck the first time I saw Mary that I never thought she would ever have time to speak to someone like me. So the power of it when she did was great. Remember that, all of you, find someone to support. It means an awful lot to them. All of you who have made it to this room, you have support to give to someone else. But it's not enough, dear friends, to get yourself elected. You have to be able to work within the structures and the climate of the organization you are elected into. And those structures are created by the people who were there before you. Sometimes several generations ago, perhaps 100 years ago, for some unions when they were created. And they are very robust. It takes a lot of time and effort to change them to be appropriate for you. And if they were all created by men 100 years ago, they may not be appropriate for women today. And you need to identify them and have the power to change. And you're not going to do that alone either. This takes the ability to identify and to find tools and way of changing. But it's also the climate, the way we speak to each other, the way we work. Do you work in isolation? Do you work in dialogue? And before I pull in the panelist, I thought I'd quote a professor from Norway, whose name is Berit Aas. And she has developed something that in English is called the master suppression techniques. And she says, the day you can identify these techniques and make them visible, then you've mastered them. And the 5 of them in English, one of them is making invisible. Have you ever felt that you're at a meeting and you speak and it's as if you weren't there? Nobody takes notice of you. You've been made invisible. Ridiculing. Making fun of you in some way or another. You hold a speech with a lot of content and the only comment you get is your dress.
Yeah.
Withholding information. When you suddenly notice that everyone else knows something you don't know. It's a great power technique. And then, of course, when you're in the situation, damned if you do and damned if you don't. Double punishment. No matter what you do, it's going to be wrong. You've been put up in a corner. Or heaping blame and putting to shame. These are the 5 suppression techniques that she has developed. Both men and women use them. I probably use them myself, sometimes unconsciously, because it's about power. And it's about using the power you get in positions. That as a backdrop. Now we have 3 wonderful women here, 3 general secretaries of education unions. I have Christine Blauer from NUT, the National Union of Teachers from the United Kingdom, and she is also president of the European Trade Union Committee for Education, which we usually call the TUSA, which also is the Regional Committee for Education International in Europe. And then we have Sheila Nunnan from Ireland, the General Secretary of the Irish National Teachers Organisation, INTO, and we believe she is the first woman General Secretary of INTO. And then we have Dr. Habiba Missouni from Tunisia, and you have a very long name on your organization. She is General Secretary of the National Union of University College Doctors, Pharmacists, and Dentists. Welcome, all 3 of you. Now I shared a few words on my experience. I want you initially to share some words on your experience of coming in as women in the trade union. So, Christine, can you share with us some of your own experiences of how your career unfolded and what you experienced and observed before you came into the trade union? I know you were a teacher for 33 years.
Yep. I was very, very fortunate to start work in London in a school that had 120 teachers. It was a very, very big school, a secondary school. And almost to a person, they were in the National Union of Teachers, my own union. In fact, there's a saying that some of our American friends use: if you're in the building, you're in the union. And that was pretty much true at Holland Park School, although, of course, our non-teaching colleagues were in different unions. But that was a very good start. My local branch of the union had meetings, regularly had meetings of 150 teachers. We didn't always agree. In fact, very often we disagreed quite robustly, but it was a very, very good start because you had to make your place if you wanted to say something in one of those meetings. So I have always, from when I first started, been active in the union. And I think one of the very big things for me was that whilst the National Union of Teachers is clearly and critically a trade union, fighting for bread and butter trade union issues, it is also a professional association. And from the word go, we were always concerned about teachers' development. And we didn't see this as in contention. We saw these things as joined together. And I went on from there to become an officer locally.
Great. Sheila?
I think my story is somewhat similar, and I just want to take the starting point back because the Minister referred to high participation rates. From a parental point of view, there was great encouragement in my family to go to third level education, and there's actually a very strong value, I think, placed in Ireland where means allow to have people actively, men and women, participate. I think in the emerging state there was a real recognition that participating in education, there was a huge value attaching to that. So that was a very strong value. The second thing, which is slightly different, in the primary education sector in Ireland, there's just the one union. So there's almost a seamless approach from go to school, go to your college of education, and you're back in school. And the primary teachers union, it was, you know, there's a very strong density. It was almost part and parcel of your transition into becoming a teacher, which was very helpful. And like Christine, thirdly, where I began teaching in the suburban part of Dublin, there was a lot of energy because the city was expanding and there was a huge number of young teachers getting employment. It may be a reflection of the economic circumstances of the time, but union meetings were the highlight of our social life. So it was an area where people readily congregated, but they were very energetic. And there was a lot of people around, and so it was, from my point of view, incremental. You got involved in your local union meeting, that plenty of encouragement to go forward for officerships, encouragement to attend national conferences, and we would have spent a lot of time conspiring and drawing up debates to overthrow, you know, the executive decisions of the day. But it was a real learning ground for me in those early years, and a very strong presence of the union in my professional and trade union life.
Thank you. Now we've heard from two women from Northern Europe. Habiba, if we move to Northern Africa, to Tunisia, and a country that's gone through great changes, how was your path into the trade union movement?
Merci beaucoup. Je suis très flattée et très honorée de cette invitation, de siéger parmi vous. Je représente un syndicat au nom très lent, mais qui représente tous les enseignants des facultés de médecine, médecine dentaire et pharmacie, mais aussi des écoles de santé, c'est-à-dire les sages-femmes, les infirmiers. Donc nous sommes vraiment à la croisée de deux dossiers importants, c'est-à-dire l'éducation et la santé. Pour revenir à mon parcours, moi je suis donc professeure à la faculté de médecine de Tunis. Et je viens d'une corporation qui a été classiquement représentée, nos représentants syndicaux, c'était classiquement nos professeurs, j'oserais presque dire nos mandarins. Et clairement, après la révolution tunisienne, avec tout ce qui venait et arrivait dans notre pays, tout était permis, mais tout était possible, mais tout pouvait arriver, le pire comme le meilleur, une démocratie qui se construisait, qualité d'enseignement qui quand même se dégradait, et donc on était un groupe parmi les plus jeunes de notre corps qui avaient réellement envie de changement et d'engagement. Et pour nous, le syndicat offrait la meilleure possibilité de s'engager pour notre quotidien, pour la qualité de l'enseignement dans nos institutions, pour la vie dans nos institutions, mais par rapport aussi à tout ce qui se passait dans notre pays au décours de la Révolution. Et en fait, on a commencé comme ça une campagne, réellement c'était du porte-à-porte, d'adhésion, pour faire participer la base à la vie du syndicat. On a essayé de ramener le syndicat à l'ensemble de notre corps. Et vraiment, ce que je disais, c'était du porte-à-porte. Et on a mené comme une grosse campagne de démocratisation au sein de notre syndicat. Et le résultat a suivi, c'est-à-dire on a vu arriver très rapidement une nouvelle génération de responsables syndicaux qui finalement traduisaient ce que nous sommes. Et donc notamment avec l'arrivée de beaucoup de jeunes et beaucoup de femmes, chose qu'on n'a pas du tout eu avant au sein de nos bureaux syndicaux. Et c'est comme ça, en fait, que donc il y a eu un changement au niveau des bureaux syndicaux, et notamment moi-même qui suis arrivée au poste de secrétaire général.
Thank you. Now, you've all told stories about how you got into the union, and you've had support, someone's opened the door, you've had unions that have backed you in historically but also recent times, a lot of young activists. But still we see, if we look at the statistics globally, that women are not represented in the top positions in the same amount as they are on the membership level. I think many of you will have picked up a document here from our Latin American region where they quote their numbers, that in the membership, there's 70% women, but 30% in the leadership. So it's sort of opposite. In this situation, we often look for tools. How can we reverse this, or at least get the 50% representation that perhaps women deserve? Sometimes we talk about quotas. Sometimes we talk about women's committees so that they can encourage each other. But all these tools have an element of being controversial. Feel that you're giving preference to somebody. Would you, Christine, like to reflect a bit about why do these tools become controversial and what do you think about them?
Okay, I think they are controversial. When I first started in the trade union movement, I was not a fan and have never become a big fan of quotas. What I'm a very big fan of is providing spaces for women to make sure that the skills that they definitely have are able to develop, and also to make women understand that there are different approaches to leadership. I'm going to say something in Welsh now. My president is here and she's Welsh, and there's an expression in Welsh which I hope I'm saying properly, Beth. Ben byd bin bont, which means to be a leader you have to be a bridge. And I think that the lone hero forging ahead style of leadership tends to be more characterized by men, whereas being a bridge and leading people and working together tends to be more of a leadership style of women. And of course, the lone hero style is generally what we see. It's what you see in the papers and so on. And I think that we have to encourage women to know that there are different ways of doing leadership, and actually collaborative leadership is just as important and sometimes more effective than that lone person forging ahead. So I would prefer that we develop women from where they are rather than set up quotas. After all, in the UK we have had one woman Prime Minister, but it was Margaret Thatcher.
She's always a party spoiler.
I'm tempted to ask the other two the same question on quotas.
Well, it's interesting that our Minister for Education outlined the Irish National Government strategy, and it is one that I support. We have to really use every mechanism to just create those role models. We have 15% in national political life in Ireland, and our trade unions are not more hugely represented. My own personal experience in two fronts: the Irish Congress of Trade Unions have reserved seats for women, and it has given a place to women around the executive table to see the global issues, because it's important that you get an opportunity to understand the broad range of issues. It can make committee meetings a little unwieldy because they're quite large, but I think that's well offset by the experience that you can gain from it. When I was elected onto the executive of my own union, there were 2 women, and there's 16 elected executive members. There were 2 women initially on that. And like a lot of bodies, actually everybody had designated seats, but luckily when I arrived, the other woman, I just happened to be sitting beside her, so we bonded very quickly together. Now that grew to 8 women, which is about 50%. But sadly, I'm actually concerned that the trend is almost, that seems to be the plateau at the moment. So we're going to have to go back and make sure that we do reflect that at national level. It's one element, as you say. It's one tool. The structures, the way we do our work, the way we conduct our business, the way we organise our meetings, the way we deal with the care issue, both at trade union level and political level, is still not dealt with properly. But structures have been huge. I mean, the establishment in our own union of the Equality Committee, which was very contested a number of years ago, has made a huge contribution, not just in promoting policy, but the opportunity for women to engage at national committees, that aren't necessarily the Central Executive Committee. Many of those women then came onto the executive from that experience. So it is finding mechanisms and enablers to give women the experience and the confidence. And I'm very open to quotas, I think, to see that can bring women forward.
Great. Habiba, your union is a younger union. What has your approach been to have mechanisms to encourage women to take positions in the union? Do you have quotas? Do you have a women's committee?
En fait, moi-même, je suis à la tête d'un syndicat national qui est affilié à une centrale syndicale plus grande, qui est le principal syndicat tunisien, qui est l'Union générale des travailleurs tunisiens. Autant au sein de notre petit syndicat, on a réussi, par rapport à ce que je vous ai raconté tout à l'heure, à faire amener une nouvelle génération de jeunes et de femmes au poste de pouvoir, autant c'est un constat au niveau de la centrale syndicale. On a une grosse disparité entre l'importance de la masse de femmes militantes de terrain, c'est un syndicat dont la moitié des adhérents est à peu près des femmes, et la rareté des femmes au poste de responsabilité avec aucune femme au niveau du bureau exécutif et uniquement 4 femmes dont je fais partie au niveau de la commission administrative. Et cette disparité, elle est réellement inquiétante, surtout pour un syndicat qui se donne, et c'est vraiment ce qu'il est en train de faire, d'amener et de propulser au sein du pays des valeurs telles que l'égalité, telles que les droits des femmes, etc. Et la nouvelle approche qui va être adoptée, et moi-même je la partage, c'est la politique de quotas de façon ponctuelle pour aider ces femmes compétentes et vraiment qui ont beaucoup donné au syndicat avec un grand passé syndical d'arriver au poste de pouvoir au niveau des structures moyennes et au niveau du bureau exécutif en renforçant leurs capacités justement pour ramener plus de femmes au poste de responsabilité. Et donc, très bientôt, la politique des quotas sera adoptée au sein du Conseil national de l'Union générale des travailleurs tunisiens.
Interesting. So you see, you have 3 general secretaries. They have similar views, but they also aren't completely identical. And perhaps that reflects that as human beings we have different views, but also it is also contextual. So it is about finding the right tools for your own union in your situation. Now we went from a young union. I want to go back to you, Sheila, because I believe how old is Into?
145 years.
145 years. It took a few years until they elected a woman as a general secretary. Why do you think the time was right when you came along?
Well, in fairness, I think, my success, and I'm very proud of being the General Secretary of the Irish National Teachers Organisation, comes very much on the back of huge work done by both men and women prior to my time. I mean, when I was engaged as a young activist in the union, the issue of women's participation was huge at the time, and there was a lot of big battles fought at that time. All of the encouragement I got, previous elections run, my predecessor, who was the Deputy General Secretary, we have had a lot of women presidents. We're celebrating our first woman president of the INTO almost 100 years ago, Catherine Mahon. So it's all of those role models down the year. But the reason it took so long, for cultural reasons, we had a marriage ban in teaching, where married women had to leave their jobs. The gender discrimination in pay was there for a long time. The Minister again referred to a very strong cultural role of women as carers. So it really has taken quite a long time. But the ceiling was well shattered before I became the first General Secretary, and that's really, as I say, on the back of huge work been done by previous generation of both men and women to pursue the equality agenda. So, and hopefully now that will be, the beginning of a much stronger role for women going forward.
We go back to you, Christine. You were also president of the EIWWC, which means that you stepped into a leadership role on the international trade union movement. How's that compared to being at home, sort of when you cross the channel?
Well, it's a tremendous privilege. I think it's a tremendous privilege to work for the trade union movement at all, and certainly to be able to step up and move into working internationally. Of course, my predecessor as president was a man. I'm very pleased to be taking this role as a woman, and I hope that I'm managing to work in that collaborative way with colleagues from the office, but also with other delegates who come to the committees and go and see their work around the place. Again, though, it was a matter, I think, of working with the other unions and feeling that they would have confidence in my being able to take that role. I think it wasn't myself pushing myself forward. It was actually feeling that I could work with that group of unions. And I think that comes from trying to get rid of the invisibility of which you talked. One of the reasons why women sometimes do have difficulty is because women's history is not well taught, and we don't see the path that has been forged by other women previously. So I'm very keen that as teachers we make sure that there is the face and the voice of women in the history curriculum, it's an uphill struggle with my government at the moment. But there are very many women, as Sheila has said, who've forged the path before us. And of course, the fact is that education itself is globalized, so it's really important to be able to play a role by talking with other activists, both at the European level but also here at the world level.
Habiba, you're functioning in a country that's gone through quite an upheaval, and you're developing. You've just adopted a new constitution. You've been part of what some call the Arab Spring, which means that not only have you been creating a trade union, but at the same time you've been a civil society movement that has moved and been active for change. I wonder if you could share with us some of your experiences of being a woman activist in an Arab country in the last years.
D'abord, je n'ai pas créé le syndicat, on a pris la suite du syndicat. C'est-à-dire que nous avons travaillé en Tunisie dans un contexte extrêmement particulier, c'est celui de la post-révolution tunisienne. Et avec l'arrivée justement de nouveaux partis, notamment d'un parti islamiste au pouvoir. Et donc ce que je disais tout à l'heure, tout devenait possible, c'est-à-dire on pouvait parfaitement créer une démocratie, un monde meilleur dont on rêve tous, mais on pouvait aussi basculer dans autre chose. Et donc nous, en tant que syndicat, bien sûr qu'on a travaillé sur des dossiers corporatistes, ça va de soi, bien sûr qu'on a travaillé sur la réforme de l'enseignement, mais aussi on a eu d'autres défis à soulever, et notamment on a beaucoup travaillé sur chose qui est très importante pour nous, c'était la préservation des libertés académiques et des structures académiques, que les politiques ne puissent pas mettre la main sur la vie de nos écoles et de nos facultés, que ce soit par rapport à nos règlements intérieurs, que ce soit aussi par rapport à ce qu'on enseigne. Et que je vous disais, je viens d'un domaine particulier qui est à cheval entre l'enseignement et le domaine médical. Et pour nous, ça, c'était fondamental de préserver nos institutions de la mainmise d'un ministre islamiste, mais même des ministres qui pourront venir après. Autre chose sur laquelle on a énormément travaillé, pour nous, réellement, c'était un choix stratégique, c'est de travailler avec les jeunes. Et les jeunes, ça, c'est fondamental parce qu'on espère pouvoir former de bons techniciens, mais aussi des citoyens qui s'engagent dans la vie de leur cité et dans la vie de leur pays. Et les jeunes nous ont réellement rendu, c'est-à-dire grâce à eux, on a vu le fruit de notre travail, et les jeunes nous ont apporté quelque chose d'important, une importante visibilité au niveau de la scène de notre pays. Et par exemple, au décours d'assassinats politiques, on a fait et organisé d'importantes manifestations de rue, et on a vu des jeunes qui sont venus dire finalement les choses auxquelles ils croient, et en tant que citoyen, en tant que citoyen, être actif et agir sur la scène publique. On a travaillé au sein de notre syndicat et au sein de la centrale syndicale, et notre centrale syndicale a eu le mérite de beaucoup participer comme moyen de pression pour amener une constitution que nous jugeons valable, avec notamment l'adoption de la parité dans un pays arabo-musulman, et aussi pour un changement démocratique. Et on a vu ce gouvernement islamiste céder la place à un gouvernement de technocrates. Mais de toute façon, pour nous, la constitution, elle n'est jamais parfaite, elle n'est jamais idéale, et elle ne vaut que par le travail des femmes et des hommes qui ont participé à sa création, et surtout qui participeront après à leur succès. Et le succès de cette constitution passe pour nous par une réforme de l'enseignement, parce qu'il n'y a pas mieux que l'éducation comme clé de voûte d'un pays démocratique, comme garantie justement à une société qui garantirait finalement des choses élémentaires et fondamentales telles que l'égalité, les droits des femmes et le progrès et la modernité.
Take off the headphones. So I'll do that. And I think it's very interesting, Habiba, because I believe that the union movement through times have been civil movements that have fought for rights in very many countries, and that they also have been very key to fight for women's rights in different countries, and they've been at the forefront at this. In my own country, we had the centenary for women's right to vote last year, the same time as you were celebrating the Dublin lockout. A few years after Finland, as President Talonen voted, but still, it was 100 years ago. And so many other rights which women have achieved through the years. Do you see Christine, Sheila, any role for trade unions to fight for women's rights, the civil movements anymore?
Can I just start? Absolutely. One of the suffragettes in my own country, Elizabeth Wilding Davidson, who was killed by the King's Horse at the Derby, she was indeed a teacher. We would like to claim her as a member of the National Union of Teachers, but our records don't go back that far. But the fact is, she was a teacher. And it's really critical, I think, for us to make sure that we, in the unions, pick up the history of women who've done these things, but also that we challenge on stereotyping. So one of the pieces of work that my own union has done is to say, in the primary classrooms, we must not allow that notion that some things are boys' things and some things are girls' things to happen. So in our professional work and in our trade union work. And I think that teachers' unions globally, I think that we do see ourselves as in that social movement trade unionism approach, because we want to work with parents, we want to work with the general public, we want, as you say, Habiba, to work with young people to make sure that our values, progressive values, are actually the ones that prevail.
Oh, I think teacher unions are very well placed. We kind of, sort of nearly have a moral responsibility. We're very much at the edge of what's going on in our schools and classroom. In Ireland, I think there's been a reasonable amount of social progress. But at the same time, in terms of those being enablers of women's participation, we have a very long road to still travel. And I think the trade unions have to be at the forefront of that. In relation to, I was remarking to you earlier, there was a piece in one of our national newspapers at the weekend, some very interesting interviews with people over 90 years of age. They're just running a series of interviews with ordinary people, and it was an elderly woman in her late 90s who had never worked outside the home herself but had a very large family, and she was making the observation, it was very humorously written, and she said she's looking at all these young women now and she's really glad she stayed working at the home because she can't believe how hard they're all working to combine the two things. And she said, I don't know why women wanted to learn how to drive cars, because all they're doing now is driving people around here, there and everywhere. But there was a very serious note to it, because while we're very pleased with the progress we have made, but we still haven't made sufficient progress in terms of how that balances out for women. So I think that whole care area, be it looking after children or elder care or the very strong primary role that women still, by and large, the majority role taken on by women, that of itself, I think, is a huge issue, not just for women, in education, trade unions or in education, but generally for the role of women in society. So there is a very strong kind of civil society role, and I think campaigns like the living wage and decent work for women, decent work for men and women. Teachers have a very powerful voice, I think, in being advocates for those areas, and we have to continue to associate ourselves with all of those areas. I mean, the Millennium Goals are the classic example.
And you're making, both of you, such a good case of linking women in trade unions and also women in education on how our dual role interacts all the time, that we can't distinguish, even though we sometimes have to be careful about it. But Habiba, you have reminded us how important it is that we are able to include young women, or young people in general, specifically now thinking about how we can make sure that we can include young women. We had a goal for this conference that we wanted 30% women below the age of 35. We haven't quite achieved it. And but there are young women. I don't know, how many of you are under 35? Can you stand up? Yeah, these, everyone, they are the ones that are going to be running the future women's conferences, the future congresses of EI, and so on. So please support them and take care of them. But they're not here automatically, because those of us who are in position we have to make sure that we open the door and give a space for those that are up and coming. Otherwise, we're not supporting recruitment. Do you have any ideas?
I was just going to say that we go out deliberately, as Habiba said, to organise our young members. So we made some badges that said, "I'm not 36," because young members counts until you're 35. And I think that is critical. I remember addressing a young teachers' conference about 3 or 4 years ago. And at the end, I said, you need to think, of course you need to think where you want to be in your career, because, it's important to have a job. But I want you to think about where you will be in the union. And the first person to put up their hand in the Q&A was a young woman, and she said, "I want your job." And I thought, well, there you are. We've got the succession planning.
Do you have any ideas, Sheila? How do we recruit them and keep them and give them the place they deserve?
And again, it's probably down to the structures thing. We've actually in our own union just a fortnight ago had what we refer to as a youth conference, but for members under 35. 50% of our union are under 35 years of age. So that's, it's critical for us in terms of succession. Now, it was hugely well attended, and, it was an impressive participation, I think. Great confidence. It's terrific level of confidence, I think, but to convert that. But I think having conferences like that, we trained up a number of facilitators to participate in the conference. In our own union, we've had this is our 4th year, a very small scheme, an intern scheme where we second 2 teachers to come in and work within the structures of the union so that they can see the operation of it, and then they go back out to school, and then hopefully either they will want to in the future maybe apply to be a trade union official, or indeed to participate on the national executive. And while it's quite a small project, it's been very successful. So we're just continuously looking at ways. I have to say, I think the structures debate is a very significant one. I find it very frustrating. We are very poor in the trade union movement, I believe, at trying to alter the manner in which we do our business. We're very wedded to our own ways of doing things. We're very wedded to our own structures. We have a terrific union. We have 160 branches, ranging from tiny small branches to very large branches. And the tiny small branches don't like the very large branches sometimes because they think they might dominate the business. But at the same time, the big branches, so you get some of this going on. But the small branches managed to persuade the big branches to have a cap on their numbers. But the big branches didn't persuade the small branches that they should double up. So we have these constant debates going on, and everybody tells us that change is a really good idea, but not necessarily in my branch or in my school or in my union. And I'm constantly trying to look for ideas as to how you get people to really engage meaningfully in how we change our structures, because when I looked at the delegates that attended our youth conference, it seems to me they're not necessarily, particularly in a social media age, not going to engage perhaps in the same way, but we don't seem to have yet decided what the new way is. So I think there's a lot of thinking to be done to keep the debate and dynamic is at the heart of a trade union. So it is a way of doing that that doesn't dismiss the traditional structure, but certainly allows for it. But I'm open to all the suggestions about structural change.
Perhaps you can get some from Habiba. How do you make sure that the young people will keep coming into your union and taking part?
Ce qu'on pourrait aussi faire, c'est ce qu'on essaie aussi de nous de faire, c'est d'aller les chercher un peu plus tôt. Et justement, on est en train de beaucoup travailler avec les étudiants, les gens qui sont en formation, qui finalement sont notre future base, de les impliquer via leur syndicat des étudiants, de travailler beaucoup ensemble. On fait beaucoup d'assemblées générales ensemble. On les associe à nos sessions de formation. Qu'ils s'intéressent dès qu'ils sont étudiants à la question syndicale. Ils se sont associés à nos revendications corporatistes, même de revalorisation de salaire. On s'associe beaucoup à leurs questions à eux et on travaille sur beaucoup de questions communes, la réforme de l'enseignement et puis tout ce qui se passe dans notre pays, et notamment la défense des droits civiques. Et juste pour l'anecdote, il y a déjà quelqu'un, la personne qui s'occupe des futurs, qui seront dans 2 ans membres de notre base, qui déjà postule pour la place, et j'en suis très contente. Une jeune qui postule. Bien sûr, en plus de tout ce qu'on peut faire au sein de notre syndicat pour faire participer les jeunes du corps, pour réellement les former, leur donner l'aptitude d'être actifs au sein du syndicat.
Great. I'm glad to hear that the succession plan is moving in several of the unions here. We're coming towards the end of this panel, so I want to give you the opportunity. Is something that you still haven't been able to say that you want to say to all the participants before they go into their working groups and share their experiences? Any last words, Christine?
Well, I think just to say, I was very interested in what Sheila said about this somewhat elderly Irish woman who felt that, perhaps young women were doing too much these days. There are clearly women who choose, for example, to be child-free, and that's, if that's a choice, I think that's a perfectly fine and very good choice. I think there's a problem if it's a constrained choice, because the situation doesn't allow for family life and for career. And my own background is that I feel very lucky that I have had a partner who was probably a better parent than I was, and was therefore able actually to devote a lot more time to domestic life probably than I was interested in doing. But there did come a point when I was interested in becoming the Deputy General Secretary of the National Union of Teachers, and he was potentially up for the headship of his school, and we had a discussion about it, and we agreed that I would go for the Deputy General Secretaryship, and he would not go for the headship, because we felt 2 jobs of that order in one household were too much. Not everybody is in that position, but I think it does require a discussion about how you organise your domestic life. And I'm bound to say, when my own 2 children when my own one daughter originally was at primary school, it took 6 adults to organise 3 children to get home, because we were all working. So these things, I think, do need to be considered, but not dismissed. It's a matter of considering them and then getting them into a proper balance, because without a doubt we need more women in senior leadership roles in the unions. If education is to succeed in the way that we want it to, it is absolutely critical that we have women's voices being heard loud and clearly in policy making.
I want to just focus a little bit on something you raised yourself about, I think it was shame or something. I think it's a huge privilege to be in the position elected to be a General Secretary of a union. But there's no, I don't know what the word is, there's no right and wrong. And I think sometimes for women, not to be afraid of failure is really important. And that means even in terms of the initial step maybe of putting yourself forward and being defeated in an election in an early round or something like that. Sometimes that can really, people's confidence can just disappear from them after that. Or indeed, when you get to a position and you make a judgment and you make a decision and you work with your executive and it's just a disaster and it goes wrong, it's just being able to not have that fear of failure. And of course the other side of that is to make sure that you have support of people. You just really, at the end of the day, leadership is about judgment, and judgment comes from information and from debate and from trying to build up consensus. But it will go wrong at times, and I think that's just, I think there is a gender aspect to that kind of confidence thing and failure. And I would just say to people, we always quote Samuel Beckett here, fail better.
Habiba?
Moi, je dirais que je crois que pour mon pays, le syndicat joue et continue à jouer un rôle important de mobilisation et de veille. Je viens d'un pays qui n'est pas encore une démocratie et où les politiques sont toujours dans leur jeu politicien électoraliste. Heureusement qu'il y a la société civile dans le syndicat pour faire un peu que les choses aillent mieux, et tant mieux, première chose. Deuxième chose, je viens aussi d'un pays que je crois l'avenir sera déterminé par les femmes. Et l'avenir aussi sera déterminé par la qualité de l'enseignement qu'on sera capable de donner aux plus jeunes. Je crois que ça va être le seul rempart réellement pour une société démocratique et contre tous les extrémismes auxquels on peut avoir affaire.
Thank you so much, all three of you. Give them a round of applause, these wonderful women. Now, it's our hope that they have inspired you to draw on your own experience and perhaps that you have got some afterthoughts, some questions you now want to figure out. And that's what you're supposed to do after the break in the workshops. This is to be a working conference. It's up to you to maximize what you get out of it by actively taking part in the workshops, and I know you will.